It's a pleasure to be with you. We have a number of esteemed guests which I'd like to introduce you to. We have Luca Franco from Luxury Frontiers. We have Chris Nader from Independent Lodging Advisor. And we also have Angus Houston from International Venue Management. And as you might have seen from our outline of the conference today, our particular panel will be focused on alternative lodging. And in particular, we'll be focusing on everything from luxury cabins to eco tents, one of the fastest growing touristic areas we feel, not only worldwide, but also across the Middle East. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in that space. So we hope to talk to you, like I mentioned, about the various different typologies and lodging accommodations in this space, not just from the luxury side, but we'll also look at the upscale, mid-scale space. And we're lucky to have some inputs also on pop-up and temporary events. So lots to talk about over the next hour or so. I'd like to maybe kick off with Angus. Like I said, welcome to everybody. Sorry, not Angus. I'll kick off with Luca. Luca, you're very well known, not just around the Middle East, but worldwide, to be very focused on this space. Your company, Luxury Frontiers, are at the forefront of this type of lodging experience. Could you give us a bit about your background and how you got into this very distinct area of hotel development?
Yes, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. James, are you on? Cannot see you. Maybe. So, thank you for this invitation. So, how I started, it's all because passionate for adventure, experiential travel, rewilding, experiential transformational travel, and since ever. And I created the Luxury Frontiers was a way to capitalizing on experiential travel trend and then export those experiential travel concepts from Africa 10 years ago and outside of Africa, where there was a demand but very limited supply. We are a design and development firm with a very strategic, holistic approach to the business. So we really understand consumer, the market demand, and then every time that we work is about understanding the context, the contextualization of the experiential, what the guests will do, and then from there is about strategy, business plan, financials, has to be financially, has to be profitable on the triple bottom lines. That's our approach. And then as we go through design and development throughout different stages, all our projects are highly sustainable. Has to be, that's the key, experiential, sustainable, alternative, and every project very bespoken. And that's how we started. That's our core business. And since and I see this COVID, this latest changes and tough for everyone. We see actually as a way to, as an acceleration towards so what I want to say is people are looking for memorable experiences, but more related towards to nature-driven project. And so what we do is very in tune to what the market wanted 10 years ago, and what it wants even more in these days and in the future upcoming.
Very good. And you mentioned your experience in Africa to begin with, and I think when we have a bit of a development hat on when we're on today's panel, and I think a lot of inspiration for lodges, especially in the Middle East, are coming from Africa, because Africa has been at the forefront of that type of development. When you look at how lodging in this space has developed in the Middle East in particular, especially let's say in the UAE, which has a number of various different camps that have developed. How have you seen that evolve in the UAE over the last number of years? And how do you see that maybe, especially in the luxury space, progressing over the next number of years as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a big fan of in UAE, but in specific about Ras Al Khaimah and Sharjah, what's happening there, and there's been a reintroduction, a revelation of what the original of the origins and the heritage in those destinations, and it's fascinating how both Ras Al Khaimah and Sharjah are approaching tourism in a different angle from Dubai. And actually, a couple of months ago, there was an interview with the ruler of Dubai saying, "My father was riding camels. I'm driving Mercedes. My son drives SUVs, but my grandkids will ride camels again." And that I think it's a strong statement to say that it's so important to embrace local cultural heritage and go back to the roots where the real values are. So it's interesting direction.
Chris, just to bring Chris in on that point, Chris, I know you've done a lot of work, let's say in the Northern Emirates. Luca mentioned Sharjah, Ras Al Khaimah, and it's an area obviously you know pretty well. If we look at more of the mid-scale, upscale type of market, where do you see the opportunities, especially in the Northern Emirates at the moment?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Luca. There has been this incredible shift from the bling and the glitz Dubai was offering in the past to now shifting completely towards nature-centric experiences. And Dubai as well, whilst yes, the Northern Emirates are doing a good job at it, I must say also Dubai, especially with the strategies that they released for tourism and how they're going down sustainability routes, some of the natural reserve that they're protecting, and you know, the introduction again of animals and different wildlife. I think you know that most of the Emirates have been doing a great job, and I must say that also one of the strong pillars of Abu Dhabi now is ecotourism. And I've been, you know, in very close conversations with various authorities in Abu Dhabi, where ecotourism is at the top of their priorities, and they're trying really to push the private sector to develop more these experiential, nature-centric types of accommodation. Al Jubail Islands, focusing on natural reserve, they have so many land in the desert that can be developed as well. And you know, some of the projects, existing projects there have been doing well, like, you know, Anantara, Qasr Sarab, and some others. They're not alternative, they're concrete constructions, but I think from a sustainability, from a experiential standpoint, they do pretty good job. And the Northern Emirates with, you know, hotels like the Ritz-Carlton Al Wadi has been also, and Al Maha in Dubai has been one of the few, you know, resorts who are concerned about sustainability and wildlife, and they've been doing a great job. But suddenly we saw the emergence of a lower category of accommodation, which is still on the high-end side. I mean, you're looking at prices above 2,000 dirhams, that is, you know, close to 500, 600 euros or dollars for just a simple bubble or a pod, with very basic services that would maybe give you breakfast, and the rest of the day you have to do your own barbecue. Limited experiences of what you can do. But the introduction of these alternative experiential lodges have started to come up in the Emirates that Luca was mentioning about. And Sharjah has been really, and the authorities there have been really visionaries when it comes to introducing some amazing concept in the Emirate. Ras Al Khaimah has also developed different types of positioning, from entry-level type of what they call glamping. I know I read, Luca, a few of your articles. I know you don't necessarily like that word, but they've introduced these types of projects. They have a very nice concept on Jabal Jais, the Bear Grylls camp, which is kind of taking you to raw experiences. So all of these projects are doing extremely well. And what I noticed during the pandemic is that they exceeded the budgets that were set prior to pandemics, because suddenly everyone wanted to be out in nature. Obviously, travel was restricted, so the rise of domestic tourism has fueled the demand as well for these projects.
And Chris, in terms of like segmentation and in terms of the actual markets that are going after, is it mostly kind of young people? You mentioned, you know, the more glamping type accommodation in Ras Al Khaimah, for instance. There's a couple of properties there that are focused on that. Is that more focused on the young people? Are you seeing young families going there as well? I know Luca very specialized in the luxury side of things. Is that's more for, you know, for couples, let's say, maybe, or a certain price segment? Based on your experience, Chris, what type of segments are you kind of seeing?
Look, to answer your question, we have to put things into perspective that these projects have been up and operating for the last 2 or 3 years, really. So, and out of those 2 years, 1.5 years was hit by a pandemic. So the type of market that they've been attracting was really driven by travel restrictions. But regardless of what caused these lodges to be, or retreats to be successful, what we saw is that there has been a huge mix of consumers and clients and guests coming to these properties. So we have some that have focused on the youngsters, more adventure driven. We've seen other projects that are more mass market, you know, entry level, family friendly, little privacy between the units, just people, you know, very close to each other and all sharing the common facilities. And we've seen slightly more high-end resorts with much more privacy, distancing the units, the tents or the pods from each other. And these tend to attract more also the local markets. The Emirati families have been coming to these projects. Obviously, they're looking for bigger units. You can't have you know, 1-bedroom tent on one side and then the kids staying 25 meters away in another 1-bedroom tent. So obviously these restrictions have to be taken into consideration. And we're seeing more and more a diverse type of clientele, from the entry level up to the very luxury, all caring for the same things. One, be in nature, go where projects are sustainable, and they're ready to pay a lot of money if the experiences are transformational and memorable.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Luca, just back to yourself. I know we touched upon it briefly. We didn't mention about the Emirates and the development here, which has been really, really strong over the last number of years. The new types of developments in this space. I think Saudi Arabia, for us as consultants, is an enormous opportunity and development at the moment. I mean, majority of us are all working across Saudi. It's very, very dear to us, and it's been obviously difficult now with travel and whatnot to get in there to carry out our work. But how do you see the kind of landscape of Saudi in that space? I mean, you see the Al Sauda Development Authority has recently been established. You've had Al Ula really at the forefront over the last number of years. What's the outlook like from your side in terms of development of new projects for Saudi Arabia in the luxury space? You're on mute, just in case you're.
Sorry, I'm a huge fan of Saudi, of the kingdom. I started discovering the kingdom a couple of years ago, and we started working on a project in Amala, in the Red Sea, then in Wadi Al Disa, and then a few other projects are coming up. And the vision of the 2030 vision were to recreate a new diversified economy, etc. But it's really about people. It's about the revelation of the Saudi mysteries, the Saudi heritage to the locals, beside, of course, to the foreigners, to the global market. And probably also COVID created obliged, like Chris was saying, obliged the locals to stay locally. It's about countryfication versus globalization, and this gave an opportunity to the Saudis to really discover the beautiful kingdom, and the kingdom is at the difference of Dubai in specific, focus really on the heritage. And when 15 years ago, when they started looking at the 2030 Saudi vision, they start thinking, are we going to follow the model of Dubai, or we follow the model of, or we rediscover and discover the Saudi country to the rest of the world? And they understood that it was about a revolution or a renaissance, cultural renaissance in the making. And they embraced the local culture, the heritage, the traditions, the communities, the values, different cultures and arts, and repolish it and create a framework that for investors and for government, public and private sector to invest with. A fascinating environment, and I'm really proud and eager to be part of this cultural renaissance in the making. As again, we're very focused on the region. We look for build a presence, actual presence, sometimes in 2021 in the region. Fascinating, and it's everybody's focusing on the ultra luxury, but I see also a tremendous opportunity for the mid-scale. We as a company, we have a higher propensity for the luxury or ultra luxury project market, and while it's interesting, there are all these mega projects like Neoma, Mala, Red Sea, Davon, Alula, Qiddiya, but there are also secondary destinations that are absolutely are upcoming, and it will take some time, but there are multiple places to take advantage to embrace.
Definitely, I think we're seeing a lot of feasibility work, a lot of kind of pre-concept work across the secondary cities in Saudi Arabia at the moment, you know, boosted by the Tourism Development Fund and their propensity to invest in projects across, you know, more the secondary cities outside of, say, Dammam, Khobar, Jeddah, Riyadh. Chris, can I ask you, just to follow up on Luca's point, like what areas of Saudi, you know, excite you now for this type of alternative lodging development? Is there any secondary cities in particular?
Yeah, as he's saying, you definitely have the usual suspect with the big PIF mega projects. But I think what's even more interesting in Saudi Arabia is looking at the other types of developments where the private sector may have land in remote location, farmlands, land in the mountain, you know, by the sea or in the desert that don't belong to these mega development. And I think the opportunities to create really authentic experiences that are immersed in nature for me, it would kind of be very interesting for this private sector to utilize that land to do so, because you're not part of this necessarily of this big giga development that they call them, but you're going more to these very you know, remote locations that are far, that where you can bring the local community in a meaningful way. And I think while, you know, many people work on these giga projects, and, you know, we discuss with all of them about opportunities, there are also some amazing areas of Saudi Arabia that, you know, people need to discover. Now, obviously, one of the biggest challenges that these places have is accessibility. And, you know, James, when you're doing your feasibility studies and you assess accessibility, then how long does it take for guests or tourists from the moment they land at an international airport to get to these remote locations? Sometimes it's like an adventure by itself. And after flying 6-8 hours to a location, I think you can probably sit in a car for 2-3 hours, but if you have to take 2 more flights and then in a helicopter and then a boat and another train, and you know, it becomes tiring. So the kingdom has amazing places, but I guess what the government is doing, and they're doing a good job at it, is actually at the same time working on this accessibility to make sure that these projects can be financially successful and people will come there.
Definitely. And I think when we look at locations, I think for ourselves, Asir province, Aba, for instance, has a lot of natural beauty. The mountainous areas there. I think road network, like you mentioned, even to access up to the mountains, that certainly can be improved. But there's a lot of exciting concepts that have been released recently, especially in Asir. When we look at Taif as well, Al Hassa, there's quite a number of exciting areas that when you travel, which we have done over the last number of years, and we know there's been plans in the past, but I think now there's a new head of steam to get these enacted. And when we look at performance last year, like Luca mentioned, during the COVID period, it was areas like Asir, it was areas like Baha, it was areas like Taif that done really, really well last year, and that bucked the trend with the captive audience, the domestic captive audience. And I think, it will bode well for the future. Mostly it will be domestic guests, we probably feel, in these secondary locations on the most. But I think we would also, looking more medium to long term, hopefully be able to attract some international tourists to these outstanding locations. I'm conscious to bring Angus in as well. Angus obviously has a really strong experience in event management, and he joins us from the UK. So Angus, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
I know you're doing a lot of work in the Kingdom, and just as we're speaking about the Kingdom, because it's probably the most exciting place for us in terms of work and in terms of hotel development at the moment. But in terms of events, there's been a real boom in events in Saudi, I suppose, especially off the back of the Quality of Life program, Vision 2030, which we referenced already. And when we go back to, say, 2019, we saw the launch of, the seasons. Riyadh seasons, Jeddah seasons in particular have had a huge effect on the hotel market. What's your kind of view about events maybe in the kind of post-COVID era now across Saudi?
I think COVID has been a really unlooked for opportunity to review and consolidate what's happening to date around that market and what they do and what the Kingdom does going forward around it. Clearly, as we've mentioned, the whole Giga project framework in the different areas and regions is going full steam ahead, but we're very conscious that there is a real depth of analysis around what they have done and what the market has told them internally, which is the right thing to do. So obviously there's been a tremendous amount of content in sport events, be it live music, core international sports, particularly things like Formula E, some wonderful iconic events such as boxing and so on. So now it's about what's the right portfolio of events for the Kingdom to build something which has continuity, and from that they can build proper business cases for the different areas of the market, both in the country and the international market. I think in this particular topic, when you're talking about lodging or temporary accommodation, there's two sides to it. I think the first point, very well made, is about how much of the Kingdom there is to see, how incredible it is, but how can you get there, and not just when you get there and you have something of a high quality to accommodate you, but what is the destination strategy, the journey to get there. And from my world of sort of more impartial operational delivery, it is about the supply chain. So it isn't all the aesthetics at the end of it. It's about the block building process to get the customers there. I think the launch of the e-visa was a watershed moment in terms of, because what that did very cleverly is it activated an area of the international market that people are familiar with. And you've got to remember, in all of these things, you're building something for a customer, be they in country or abroad. The international market is quite well educated in terms of bundling together trips like this. People like to buy all the pieces of their journey together. As Chris said, they don't want to take one flight and then have to figure out a train ride, a bus ride, and cobble it all together. They want the whole delivery, which takes them to that destination. So it's and then if you stand back from the events themselves, not all events are right for this particular element. So in the world of sport, we know the significant work that's been looked at around temporary lodging and accommodation for the World Cup in Qatar. In terms of events in the kingdom, it's going to be selective. I mean, it's a very attractive proposition in the region, full stop, and has a real deep history around it, which I think goes without saying. But you have to really carefully look at what the economics are. As Lucas said, it comes down to profitability at the end of it, and then really making it easy for the customer, for the market segments to get there. It doesn't work. It's not, one shoe doesn't fit all in this case.
And Angus, just because when I look back to the UK and I look at the very developed temporary lodging market and pop-up accommodation that's available for the pre-COVID calendar events, from the concerts, the Glastonbury's of this world. I was looking just yesterday evening actually about the British Open for the summer. If I get a chance to go back home, I'd love to go to the British Open in Royal St. George, if at all possible. And I just clicked on the accommodation. There was an accommodation tab, and one of the option was, camping, glamping accommodation that was being offered. It appeared pretty much on site or just off site for the British Open. So you can see this type of accommodation, maybe traditionally in the UK, might have been offered just for concert goers, maybe, or festivals that are ingrained in the, and well set up over 20, 30 years. But when you see it at certain like golf events and coming into more sporting events like the World Cup, do you see any kind of key learnings from your involvement in those temporary lodging? Let's say use the World Cup, for example.
Yeah, Qatar? I think the key lesson as to how the industry in the UK and Europe has evolved is to really try and leverage and link in with the supply chain that exists. So I'll come back to that in a second. But the simple philosophy of don't try and do everything yourself. If you are building an event, a destination, an experience, and you're looking for that offering, and then as you rightly say, years to come, you'll click on accommodation and you'll find, a radius of the event, you'll find 14 different offerings from 5-star to 3-star to suit all the different customer demographics. Then the key learning is look to the experts, look to people like Luca, who can tell you what that particular area of the market looks like, and then put it together in a practical way, in a commercially viable way, very transactional way. So the key learnings are don't overcomplicate it. And a lot of some of the festivals or sports events have thought, well, we can do that. How difficult can it be? Let's try. We've got some space. We've got some land. We've got a website. But what that does is it takes people away from what the core event is. So work with the specialists. And there are international specialists in this field that will build a model based on what the event, destination, or offering is. I'm sure Luca's firm would be in that field in its very specialist high-level market. But in terms of volume, it'll be interesting to see where Qatar get to, because of the sheer numbers potentially that they could be looking at accommodating in temporary lodging, tents, glamping, whatever way you want to call it. I think that as a sports event, that will be a real first because of the sheer potential volume of it. But the rest of it is keep it simple, keep it manageable, and keep it deliverable.
Angus, if I may ask you a question, I've been seeing a lot, and especially in Saudi, requests for alternative accommodation, tented camps, and other for special, seasons and festivals and events where they need these accommodations to be up and running within 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Absolutely.
And I mean,
Luke is smiling.
Saudi likes to move very fast on these projects, but I was curious, based on your experience in the UK. I don't know what types of ADR and prices these accommodation tend to get, but whenever we speak about these pop-up activations and accommodation in Saudi, some of the expectations are in thousands and thousands of dollars a night for a project that is meant to be built overnight. Luca works on project, over 12, 18 months to get something of that super high luxury level that can charge $3,000, $4,000 a night. But I'm not sure how these types of experiences can be created for these events in such a short time frame.
I absolutely agree with you. I know from our own experience of working with the big temporary structure companies that are not who don't specialize in accommodation, even their challenge in the kingdom to provide the quality and depth of the large temporary structures for the events is hugely challenging. To take it to the area where it's bespoke accommodation that fits the market in the time expectations that are currently around some of these events, it needs a lot more thought, because it is not a simple mechanism to do. And I think, as you alluded to, you have to be really clear on your customer demographics. It's not an off-the-shelf. You can't have a 2-bedroom something here and a 4-bedroom something, or whatever. And everything, as I said before, is about the journey to get up to that point. You can build something, but how are you going to get there? What's it going to be like? And then what are you going to do when you come out again? So there's a whole end-to-end spectrum of the business model around this that needs real, proper, careful consideration. I think, it'll be interesting to see which of the big players consider what the market opportunity is and how they address it. Is this an off-the-shelf scenario? If you talk about how things have evolved, which is something buy off the shelf, it could be blocks, it could be tents, it could be something, and it's just put in and left and switched on. I don't think for the kingdom that is the immediate solution. I think something's got to be figured out that's more bespoke, more specific, and more deliverable. So I think there's a way to go on that. But there's no doubt, if you look at the 3 or 4 key sectors, and a particular sector that's pulling a lot of our time at the moment is themed attractions. So people talk a lot about the giga projects and the venues and the cadir and the inventory and sport. I think Seven Entertainment is in some respects under the radar, because the sheer volume, size, and outcome of what they're going to build in terms of themed attractions is phenomenal. And actually, of all of the activities, that is the one that is really for the kingdom, in the kingdom, and for the domestic market. Now, this lodging accommodation type segment within it, which is obviously heavily geared towards families, has really been, in the last 5 years, has really taken a different direction from some of the big global operators like Merlin. Because what do you have? You have brands, you have themes, you have Disney, you can build things that are bespoke around the attractions, and you have a very compliant market. I know that as a father of 4 young children. You just want somewhere that's nice and lovely for the family market. And the thing that it also does is that it's a very simple mechanism for your additional revenue streams. So if you think of attractions, if you're a destination, an event, or an experience, you don't just want to provide that accommodation bubble. You want to provide the mechanisms for revenue, because they're going to look around. They're going to come and say, well, where do I eat and where do I shop and what else can I do? So bundling together your commercial model is really important. So it'll be interesting. The whole market is open, top to bottom. So it's really, where do you start? If I was Luca, where would I start? Well, I mean, he's got a world-class, phenomenal range of products already, so he's ready to go. But there's probably 8 other levels below Luca's that are equally exciting at the moment.
And Angus, just to pick up on that point, so in the UK, when the festivals, I assume there's obviously specialist companies providing that temporary lodging. They're going from event to event over the summer season. Are you kind of saying that type of company doesn't really exist from where you're looking at across the Middle East at the moment?
Not that we've come across. I mean, it's an off the shelf. So you go, if somebody came to Luca and said, I'd like 5 of your best luxury lodges put at the Formula One in Jeddah, then that could be done, built with, you assume, with time, budget, and planning. And that's that. If you take the same approach to, I now want to accommodate 5,000 people at the Formula One in Jeddah in a mixture of yurts, cabins, tented structures, whatever. So there's a modular approach to this. You only have to ask the question. But there are the big festivals, and you only have to look at how many. I mean, Glastonbury is the great example, because it's come from 50,000 tents a night, all this incredible population of people, to now you can rent lodges there with swimming pools, for goodness sake. You know, there's nothing that cannot be delivered and done in that temporary lodging market. So anything is possible. You just have to turn your attention outwards to find where the specialists are to develop that. Then for someone like the Kingdom, you have to get the mechanisms in place to deliver it.
Very interesting, Angus. Luca, do you have any comments on that space?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because almost every day now we receive inquiries for short-term projects, long-term projects. Even if the long-term projects are for next year, and the short-term projects are in 3 months' time, and so even the long-term projects are luxury, ultra luxury, and where it takes time. And so I think that there is a discrepancy between the public sector that has their return is to activate the site in terms of activate the destination. That's the return of their investment. And they don't see a specific number. They just want media, PR, momentum for that specific location and buzz. And they're inviting in the meantime the private sector to invest, but the private sector has a different agenda, needs a return of investment. And so cutting short these projects to activate sites, where is the return of investment for the private sector? And if you have a very short timeline, there is no time to design. It's only time for an off-the-shelf tent, and there's no time for details. And so go straight to construction, go straight to installation. And so those beautiful camps or lodges that are built in 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, and they look beautiful from 10,000 feet high. But when the guest goes there, sometimes it's disappointing. And that affects the brand, the reputation, the project itself. There's no return of investment. So it's important to find the right sweet spot of what it's possible to do, and quality, brand awareness, and return of investment. Also, what I often lately receive inquiries like, we want this in 6 months' time to activate the summer or the winter, but also the after use has to be for the next 10 years. So there is this mismatch of expectations that sometimes, then often, doesn't work. So, but fascinating. I'm very interested to explore idea and opportunities, but I tend more to focus, allocate our resources to long-term quality and vision and execution.
Yeah, James, I wanted to comment on this, because we often look at it from a design, construction, and supply chain to get the project up and running very quickly to meet those tight deadlines. But we often forget to speak about what does it take to operate these projects for the rate that they're meant to be. If Luca's developing a project at $500,000 a key, to be able to deliver a price of $3,000-4,000 a night, then for someone to be able to pay such a rate, it's not just about having a super nice tent. That's a very important part of it. But then what happens when the guest arrives? What types of experiences are provided to him? Is it a one-off, or will the guest come back because there is more to do? What other facilities are available there? What type of Luca used a very powerful word, which is the transformational experiences side. What will transform you when you reach to these alternative accommodation and lodges and retreats and camps? So it is very important to look at the feasibility of a project from also a long-term operation standpoint. Unlike, we keep hearing, let's use the word glamping now, we keep hearing glamping is an amazing investment opportunities because you have super high GOPs of 60-70%, and you get a return on investment in 2 years, and it's a great business. What we're talking about here is not really glamping. What we're talking about here are luxury, alternative accommodation, experiential lodges that actually have a very high operating costs. You're talking about not very high GOPs, because you have to deliver the same quality of service that an Aman, a one and only Four Seasons deliver in a normal resort. So, salary of your GM, all the other expenses that you need to service the tent. Plus, don't forget, we're in remote locations. And often when it comes to utilities, costs in the region are extremely high. You have to chill the pool, you have to provide air conditioning all year round. These are very high expenses for a lodge to take on. So always looking at this profitability that Luca was talking about in relation to what is the investment that I'm gonna put in such a project, what is the rate that I can achieve in this location, and therefore what type of IRR I'm expecting for the project. And I'm sure you do a lot of this in your studies, James.
Yeah, certainly. I think I want to pick you up on maybe an earlier point you mentioned about the experiences. And I suppose there's a lot of development in this space across the Middle East at the moment. And, a go-to point is look at benchmarks of other successful resorts and learn from those and try and add to them. And I think a key area which we get a lot of feedback on is try to grow the length of stay in these types of resorts, because typically people will go for, say, a weekend or a few days, let's say, during a holiday period. But especially in secondary locations, you want to try and push the length of stay. So Chris, I might ask you that question. What are the kind of additional experience besides the traditional, let's say, have a nice spa? What are the other kind of activities? And some of them could be relatively, low cost. What are you kind of seeing on your radar in terms of maybe new experiences that are being created in these resorts to, keep visitors wanting to come back for more, but also to kind of drive that length of stay so they can have a program of events over a number of days to keep families, like Angus mentioned, these children there, they need to be kept happy for maybe a number of days if they visit somewhere. What are you kind of seeing in terms of those type of attractions, or in terms of those type of areas for a hotel that could be a success factor?
Yeah, I guess the beauty about these projects is that you're often, and they should be, in locations where obviously there is no resort on the left or right of you, there is no tower behind you or in front of you, you don't have neighbors, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And I think these are the most successful sites for these projects. So the fact that you have such an immense land around you, the key is to be able to utilize this land in a responsible way. Creating experiences at the resort itself, we're all familiar what type of activities can be created on site. But I think what's extremely interesting is how to connect with the local communities, take guests outside of the resort. So go to souks, go to farms, go to integrate with the nature. I think with projects such as what Angus and Luca can do is also develop these, I would say, remote sites that allow guests to actually spend the night outside of the lodge, whether it's on a small island, whether it's on the top of a dune or on top of the mountain. It's really try to create diverse experiences that will encourage guests to come back after a few weeks, after a month, because as we all know, it's extremely hard to attract them once. You should capitalize on this to be able to attract them a second time with a cheaper cost. And the best way to do it is to give them so many experiences that they keep wanting to come back to experience more, because they didn't have the time to do it all. And I think really that's where the focus should be.
And I think partnerships and collaborations, especially with third parties. Go ahead, Luca.
Can I add here? I think it's not just about creating experiences and have the guests busy. These experiences have to be curated, have to be contextualized. The guest has to have that understanding of the local spirit of the place, and it has to be. The host becomes the guide becomes the host, and creates that bespoke and curated experiential journey for the guest, and the guest has to go through life-defining moments. And having hot balloon, that's everywhere. That's not the solution. Or having this cookie cutter experiences everywhere is not the solution. And that's what I see in Kingdom and in many other places, is to take all the experiences around the world and have them in Saudi or in every location in Saudi. It's really messy, and it doesn't add any value to the customer journey and to those creative life-defining moments. What it's really important is that, for example, create luxuries. What is it is, for example, is expect the unexpected, be surprised, or have that sense of accomplishment when you do something out of your comfort zone of every day. And it's about learning, it's about inspiring, it's about engaging with the local community, with about diversity, with and certain stuff. So that's the true luxury. Is not the product, is not the tent, is not the yacht, is not the physical box. It's about the contents. And having this high-speed construction project, high-speed to market projects, the focus is always on, oh, can you build this product? But the reality is, can you create and define those experiences? Because that way it makes the difference. It's not the product. So, sorry, I'm very passionate to the topic. And I'm always the first one to try those experiences on the field and get dirty and be inspired and have those life-defining moments.
That's
that
great insights, Luca. Thanks for sharing. Angus, go ahead.
I just wanted to say it's really refreshing to hear that as a pretty straightforward operational as sort of perspective. I take away from what Lucas just said the question, which is, what's the curational strategy? So almost not what are the other details, but because, as you said, the lodge is almost incidental or the end of that customer journey, isn't it? What are we building it for? Well, you're building it for people to sleep in, and no, we're not. You're doing it for much more than that, and actually the starting point is way back. So, and then the rest of it almost kind of writes itself after that. So even in the bigger destination planning, James, that you guys do, when you look at somewhere and the infrastructure and the approach and the strategy that's needed to it, it's a phenomenally important single strap line to apply.
Okay, very good. Right, I think that's pretty much our time. I'd like to thank you all for participating today. I hope everyone who watched got a few insights and learned something about this very wide spectrum. Like we all can, we know the word glamping, like Chris mentioned, but it's certainly not that. It's a real wide ranging space. There's lots happening in this space, and I might give the final word to Angus. Angus, when are you going to bring Glastonbury to the Middle East?
I can't wait. I think from my experience of the kingdom, and I've seen so little of it. I've seen lots of it, but nowhere near these amazing parts of it that have been opened up. And yeah, I think it's going to be phenomenal to see how that evolves. There's some very brave people involved in this, and there's going to be some incredible journeys undertaken in the next few years as the country opens up. It's remarkable heritage. So sooner rather than later.
Oh, we look forward to it. It's an exciting space, and hopefully we'll all be back together soon to talk about it, maybe in next year or two's time. So thanks again for your participation. Hope everyone watching enjoyed it. We certainly did. So thanks everyone. Take care and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just cancelled the the video, just the recording. Sorry, but it should
Cancelled, deleted, or stopped?
No, stopped. Stopped.